And they got to live with the fact that this happened. She wants to pay tribute to those amazing heroes as well. On to page 107. Lyndon, we're always interested to know, in the moments afterwards, what was it like for him when he realized the president had been shot? And the fear, of course, that maybe they're coming after me too. And then, of course, notice, we got to get somebody with our children because they might come after our children. There's all these potential conspiratorial feelings. Notice we're told two things about him. He's calm and he's quiet. That is to say, he's dealing with the situation. In the moment that it happens, Lyndon Johnson realizes he has a role to play. Of course, he himself probably wanted to break down and start crying, but he knew that he couldn't because he has to be sworn in as the next president, right, of the country. Then, of course, we get to that famous meeting between she and Jackie. I'm on page 107. Notice again the word suddenly gets used. Suddenly I found myself face to face with Jackie in a small hallway. I believe it was right outside the operating room. You always think of someone like her as being insulated, protected. She was quite alone. It's a compelling line. I think it's worth our writing even down in our notes. She was quite alone. Two readings of this, right? Brilliantly constructed line. She was quite alone. One, of course, there's nobody else there with her. Two, the reality that after an experience like this, that woman would live out the rest of her life alone. Right? She lost not only her husband, she lost the President of the United States in that pivotal moment. And Lady Bird Johnson is able to kind of capture the poignance of that moment in this line. She says it, I don't think I ever saw anyone so much alone in my life. Of course, the attempt to try to say something about her. And then a little bit later, among another woman, Nellie here, she writes, she's also strong. Let's just point out, we have a female writer talking about all of the women in this story. And notice about all the women in the story, she points out their strength, right? We gain this sense of that strength from Lady Bird Johnson's voice as well, right? Then, of course, on to the plane. This is a famous picture on page 108. You're looking at it right there at the bottom of the page. One of the famous pictures in all of American photojournalism to tell us that it in fact was happening. The fact that Mr. Johnson is called, Lyndon is called Mr. President at the top of page 108. Seeing a flag at half-mast already is giving her an indication of the power of this moment. It's like this is happening so quickly that our word sometimes is it's surreal. In other words, it's unreal. It's like, whoa, is this actually this cannot be happening. I'm in a bad dream. I'm gonna wake up, right? Sarah Hughes, another woman, is the judge that's called in, the federal judge to give the oath of office so that Lyndon Johnson can be sworn into office, right? And then, of course, she will make the observation on page 109, second paragraph. It's odd, the little things that come to your mind at times of utmost stress. The flashes of deep compassion you feel for people who are really not at the center of the tragedy. Let's pause for a moment and we'll come back to this at 3B, but this is an interesting insight. It's weird how when you're in a moment of tremendous stress that you pick up odd little things and you start paying attention to things that you normally might not pay attention to. She makes the observation here that a Secret Service man said under his breath, we never lost a president in the service. The weight of that responsibility. In other words, Lady Bird Johnson is helping us to understand, even though this has happened a long time ago, and even though we're freshmen and we have a tendency to go, dude, really? I mean, come on, it's history, who cares? She's trying to make this moment real by pointing out that there are all these people whose lives were forever affected, personally were affected by this moment. And even though at 3B, this may not be a moment for you that has great resonance anymore, right? Even though maybe it should historically, personally it doesn't. You can certainly think about a time there was a tragic moment in your life when looking back on it, you started to have all kinds of interesting insights about the ways in which the tragedy was kind of affecting other people, right? I've been using that word poignant. It's there on page 109, right? She does talk about Mrs. Kennedy caked in blood, her husband's blood. Somehow, that was one of the most poignant sights. That immaculate woman, exquisitely dressed, caked in blood. Jot down in your notes, why do you think, we're back to voice, why do you think she uses the word blood several times here? Blood, blood, blood. Some readers of this are like, dude, we get it. He was shot, he was killed, there's blood on her. No. Lady Bird Johnson is not going for the grotesque. What she's trying to show us here is the power of a woman in this moment who is having to deal with the most horrific of tragedies. Notice in the next paragraph she says, almost an element of fierceness, right? Strength. To finish, if that gentle, that dignified can be said to have such a quality, she said, I want them to see what they have done to Jack. Mrs. Kennedy saying, I will not change. I want them to see what they have done to Jack. There's always been a huge debate, and if you know anything about the killing of the assassination of President Kennedy, you know about what are called conspiracy theories, and it's fascinating that it's for her not, I want them to see as in the American people, but rather, or him to see as in the assassin, but it's them. Who is she talking about? Who is the them that she's talking about? Much has been made of this. I'll let you do your own research on that side of this debate. Finally, she says it, I tried to express how we felt. And you get this sense, even in this bit of writing, trying to express. Jot it down. It's an interesting question in 3b. A time you tried to express an idea, but you couldn't express it with words. It's like beyond words. You know what I'm saying? When you're in a tragic moment that's beyond words, and you just don't know how you even deal with that kind of an experience. She says about Lyndon, he's a good man in a tight spot. So she celebrates her husband by saying, if somebody had to step in and do this, he's certainly the guy to have done it. All right, let's now finish with level 2 and 3. At 2A, major themes and messages. Many students have pointed out that when they actually get into this reading, the one thing that blows them away is the strength of these women. We often think about women as maybe being in our culture the weak or the inferior to the male. And here Lady Bird Johnson goes, no. In the center of this tragedy, there were so many women who were standing strong for each other. And of course, we think of that powerful line about being alone. Number 2, obviously, in terms of messages. This idea of going through a tragedy, a national tragedy. There's 2 elements, right? There's, of course, the public spectacle. And then there's the private war, the private struggle, the private challenges. And Lady Bird Johnson does a fine job of kind of capturing both of those for us, right? Of course, finally, another major message or theme is, this is how to study history. And this is an interesting way to even think about the study of history through the study of autobiography. Let somebody who was there tell you about it, right? What was it like? In other words, what we want to say about this is history. Moments in time that then have ripple effects, right? You throw that rock into a pond and those concentric circles start spreading out. That's kind of the point that she's wanting to make. There's a ripple effect, and it began the moment that shot was fired, right? At 2B, rhetoric, we've already talked about voice, obviously, here. Notice word selection, like the repetition of the word blood several times. That is intentional. She's doing it intentionally to elicit a powerful response, right? At 3A, well, obviously we can ask any number of questions here. Let's first of all focus on, what do you know about this moment in time? What are the films that you know about, the songs that you know about, the movies that you know about, the TV shows that you know about, that try to kind of capture this moment in time? The different, maybe, pieces of information you were taught through school already about this moment in time, and the way in which there was fallout, right, about this moment in time. We will later, you can jot this down at 3A, we will later pay attention to our next reading and try to relate as well to this text. So we'll want to put that one in our notes as well. Finally, at 3B, let's ask about tragedy. Let's ask about national tragedy. Let's ask about what for you is the single worst moment in American history. Was it the shooting of President Kennedy? Was it the shooting of Abraham Lincoln? Was it another kind of tragedy for you? Right? Of course, finally, we can ask a very personal question. What is for you the worst tragic moment of your life? You had to go through something really bad, really nasty. What is it that Lady Bird Johnson says about that experience that you can resonate with? Is it that kind of almost like shock, numb? Whoa, dude, this cannot be happening. The idea that this just cannot be happening, and I come to realization that, oh, it is happening, and how am I going to live with that? And then, of course, the days that follow, and the months that follow, and then the years that follow. How has that moment changed you in your life as you think about it? Well, it's a sobering reading, and I hope that this reading challenges you to maybe spend a little bit more time, find a little bit more information about this time period. We'll have a couple of more texts, as I say, that are going to come back to this moment in time. Well, there you go, a White House diary of Lady Bird Johnson. Thank you.